All right, hello everyone, and welcome to Gator Studio. I've got a special guest. Eric's making a return. He was here 2 weeks ago, so glad to have you back, Eric.
Thanks, Mike. Some of you guys might remember me from 2 weeks ago. We did the polymeric sand for dummies show. If you missed that show, we do have it available on our YouTube education channel, so be sure to check that out along with all our other education videos on that channel.
All right, and who else did you bring along this time?
Well, we got Brendan with us today. Brendan is our rep from Kansas City. He's going to be taking all your questions, popping them up, prompting us to answer them. So we'll be cutting to him every now and then to feed us some questions.
All right, and if you haven't tuned in before, I'm Mike Huber. I manage some of the training here at Alliance, train our reps, train our customers. So we're here to teach you a little bit about Gator Base today. Now, Gator Base has been around for a decade. Can you believe that, Eric?
10 years. It's really hard to believe.
What were you doing 10 years ago?
We're not going to get into that, but
let's
just say it's been a while. It's been a while.
A lot of things have changed in 10 years, but hey, Gator Base has really been a constant. What we want to know right now, though, is how many of you guys have used Gator Base? Have you used Gator Base? Have you tried it? Or do we still need to do some convincing here?
Yeah, so we're gonna throw up a poll here, and it's simply going to be a yes or no. Have you used Gator Base before, or have you not?
All right, so 10 years of Gator Base. What do we think? Maybe 50-50?
Well, like I said, 10 years, nobody's a guinea pig anymore. I would hope that a lot of guys out there have.
Yeah, look,
have used it.
Looks like 60-40, 70-30.
Okay.
Let's see where we end up here, but that's promising.
Yeah.
So, we really understand that initially there were a lot of skeptics, right? So fantastic to see that 60% of you tuning in today have used Gator Base, and hopefully the other 40% out there are convinced, not only by the 60% that have tried it, but by some of the information that we're going to share with you today.
That's right.
There's skepticism in the world, right? I know some skeptics out there.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. It happens with anything. You can bring up any discussion, and there's going to be skeptics.
So, hey, we believe Gator Base works, but hey, I also believe the world is round, Eric. And there's some people out there that subscribe to this flat Earth theory, and I think it's kind of crazy. But hey, people believe anything. What we want to try to get over, or any of your objections, any of those issues that you have that have kept you from trying Gator Base today. So with that being said, we're going to launch our next poll, and we're going to ask you, why aren't you using Gator Base? Or if you have used Gator Base, what was the biggest hesitation in using it that first time?
Yeah. So for the 40% of you that haven't used it, what's your biggest pushback? And like Mike said, the 60% of you who have used it, what was the biggest hesitation at first?
All right, so we got some people that really like doing extra work. I'm going to have to bring those guys out to New Jersey, because we got lots of work you can do out here.
Keep them busy for a while.
All right, so don't trust it. 40%, don't see benefits, 6-7%, too expensive, 30%. All right, well, we can work with that.
Yep.
Those are all points that we are going to kind of tackle here during our presentation. But the other option you have is calling your Alliance Gator rep in your local area. There's nothing better than having someone kind of work with you in terms of evaluating if a job is appropriate for Gator Base, and then helping you, plan that job out and start executing it.
Yeah, and as reps, that's a big part of our job is making sure things go smoothly the first time, because we know if things don't go smoothly the first time, you tend to not want to go back to it.
All right, so for those 30% that said they don't trust Gator Base, well, we heard that even more than from 30% of the contractors early on when we first launched Gator Base 10 years ago. And after hearing that over and over again, I don't trust it, I'm not going to be the first one to use it. Hey, did the other guy use it yet?
Yeah.
We decided to do something about it. So we did a test project. And can you tell us a little bit about that, Eric?
Yeah, so roughly 8 years ago, we launched a test project at Mercer College here in New Jersey. And basically what we did is we built 2 patios that were constructed by an ICPI certified contractor.
In fact, the owner of that company is an ICPI certified instructor as well. So these guys know how to build a patio.
Yeah. So what we did is, you can see side by side here, these are both hand dug. You have the guys on the right-hand side, they're finishing up their excavation here, while the Gator Base side is starting their screeding.
Right, so you can see, done by the book. The pads in the back, closer to the tree line there, were done with machines the day before. Now they're doing that hand dug and hand moved material application in the front, side by side, same conditions, Same company, they're installing according to ICPI specifications and Alliance specifications. We even had an engineering firm out there doing nuclear density testing on the sub-base and the base material to make sure we were hitting the 98% Proctor.
We wanted to make sure that if we're doing this for true data, we are following all the guidelines specified in order to get that accurate data for you guys.
And then once this was installed, we followed this for 10 years. We went out and did measurements in the wintertime, the summertime. We followed it through all of those different seasons, through that 8-year history that it has. And amazingly enough, while they both look great, that Gator Base pad actually outperformed the traditional pad. Less settlement, truer bond lines, better looking patio in the end.
And it's important to note that it wasn't us doing the measurements. We had engineers on site taking those measurements and relaying that data back to us.
All right, so let's take a little bit of a closer look here. So you see in this photo here, we've got the Gator Base going down, and as that, one more up. So we've got our fabric going down on the Gator Base side. They're still digging. So it takes a lot longer to excavate on a traditional base, doesn't it?
Yeah, we'll get into the actual build in a little bit here, but these are just things to keep in the back of your mind for when we touch on them later.
Yep, you can see they're screeding out sand and still excavating on the traditional side. You got the sand all screeded out, still compacting that sub-base, finishing up their excavation on the traditional side. We've got fabric going down on the traditional side.
Yep.
That's good.
Yep, as pavers are being laid already on the Gator Base side.
So we're working, they're getting there. A little bit. That guy looks tired on the traditional side, doesn't he?
It's important to remember here, when you're doing that traditional base, we have to compact in 3 lifts. We don't have to do that on the Gator Base side.
So a lot of efficiency when you're talking about a Gator Base install versus a traditional install. You can see as we move through here, you've got the guys that are pretty much done laying pavers on the Gator Base side, and they're just getting ready to screed out their sand setting bed on the traditional side.
Yep.
I think the guys that were on that traditional team were a little bit upset at having been assigned that project. Huh?
If you guys saw in the time-lapse video, there was a point where there were 2 guys actually sitting on chairs watching the other guys work because they were done already.
So it's pretty cool. We have a case study available online on our Gator Base webpage talking all about this project. It goes through the history of it, the actual install, and then how we followed that through the years, the actual measurements. It's pretty impressive that not only are you getting the same, lifespan and durability, but the surface looks more even and uniform, and those bond lines look straighter on that Gator Base pad.
One of the biggest pushbacks we get when talking to a contractor for the first time about Gator Base is, I need that base. I need that structural support. I need that protection for my foundation. We're going to throw a poll up here asking, as contractors, what is the main reason or multiple reasons why you are constructing that base? So you can see a couple options here: structure and stability, freeze-thaw protection.
It's the way I was taught.
It's the way I was taught. So it's the way you've always done things. It's the way you were taught to do things. And then all the above. So,
all right. Well, I think we can all agree that those are all really legitimate reasons to use 6 inches of crushed stone as a foundation for your patio, right? It's been done thousands of years. You go to your ICPI certification class, and they show you the picture of that Roman road with the stone underneath, and that's the basis, 2,000 years ago for the way we construct hardscape projects now. So I think that makes sense.
Yeah,
let's do 6 inches of base, all right?
Well, it's important to remember there's not a wrong answer there, but Gator Base will do all of those things with much less work.
All right, Brendan, you bring us maybe 6 tons of base. We're going to start building a patio here. Brendan's going to bring us 6 tons of base. You ready to get your shovel to spread it?
That's a lot of stone.
All right, where's that base, Brendan? Oh, no Brendan. We're going to get you to jump in here.
There we go.
There's no gravel.
No gravel. No gravel. So what
2
Brendan,
packs of Gator Base?
What Brendan's holding there is the equivalent of 6,000 pounds of your crushed gravel.
So hey, those are all valid reasons to use that crushed stone, but Gator Base can perform the same exact function. So we talk about structure and stability. Well, Gator Base gives you that load distribution. It's a rigid, expanded polypropylene panel, and it helps to distribute that load over a larger tributary area, just like a snowshoe would when you're walking on top of snow, just like your plywood highway does. You put down boards to protect your grass from damage when you're moving the skid steer.
Exactly. You guys have all done this before. You don't want to tear up the grass. You lay your mats or your plywood down, and what you're doing is you're dispersing the weight of that skid steer or mini skid steer, excavator, whatever it is, over the plane of that that plywood highway.
All right, so now we're not tearing up the grass, we're not causing rutting because that load is spread out over a larger area.
Right.
And Gator Base does the same thing for pavers, right? An interlocking concrete paver, well, that helps to distribute the load to begin with, and then the Gator Base distributes that even further. So we're minimizing the actual force that the soils underneath are going to feel. Now, how about that insulation, that freeze-thaw protection, right? That's a valid reason to use crushed stone, but crushed stone does not insulate very well.
Right. So same thing. Gator Base has an R value of 3.6. When we're talking insulation-wise, that's actually equivalent to about 16 inches of your crushed stone. Yeah.
Well, 3.6 doesn't sound like much. Stone, I guess, doesn't insulate at all.
Right.
So that really helps to minimize the number of freeze-thaw cycles that your project is going to experience. Does it eliminate it entirely? No, of course not. But when you have those daily temperature fluctuations, it's 25 degrees at night, Fahrenheit, and it goes up to 45 during the day. That's what's happening in New Jersey right now. You're not going to have a freeze-thaw cycle because that Gator Base helps to prevent that transfer of heat energy.
Right. We're laying a thermal blanket over or underneath your project. So what we're doing is when we transition from fall into winter, we're keeping the ground warmer for a longer period of time. As we transition from winter into spring, we're actually keeping the ground colder. Like Mike said, we're not eliminating those freeze-thaw cycles, but we're trying to reduce them because over time, those freeze-thaw cycles is what causes your project to move.
Right. So, hey, if you can have 50% less freeze-thaw cycles in your project, that sounds like a good thing, right? Mm-hmm. So we're giving you that structural stability, and reinforcement with the Gator Base, and we're giving you better freeze-thaw protection than the crushed stone.
Yep.
So, hey, all around, pretty good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, well, I am going to transition over to our little demo pit, and we're going to walk through a Gator Base build, some of the features and benefits, tips and tricks, and things to look out for, but we'll take some questions real quick if we have any coming through on the chat here.
How long will Gator Base last? I might ever have to replace it once I install it.
So how long will Gator Base last? That's a good question. You get an answer for us, Eric?
Yeah, so Gator Base is a styrofoam product. There's a reason that they don't want us putting styrofoam in landfills. It's because it doesn't deteriorate over time. That Gator Base is going to be in the ground longer than me, Mike, or anyone watching this is alive. It's going to be in there until somebody takes it out. So when asking about longevity or how long it lasts, the answer is really longer than anyone needs to really care about.
All right. Thank you, Eric. I am here at our Gator Base demo pit now, and we're going to kind of walk through a Gator Base build. So what's the first thing that you need to do on a project? You typically need to start digging, right? We've got to get rid of that grass, the organic material, and that's the start of our project. So for a Gator Base project, let's think about how deep we need to dig. We've got the paver itself, 2 3/8 of an inch. We have 3/4 of an inch for Gator Base, and say 3/4 of an inch to an inch of sand. Now that's going to add up to about 3 5/8 of an inch, so you're not digging down too deep. One of the problems that we see with Gator Base installations is over-excavation. Contractors go out and immediately they dig too deep. In fact, at that Mercer project that we talked about, those 2 pads in the back along the tree line were supposed to be reversed. And they started digging for the Gator Base pad, immediately realized, hey, we're 6 inches down, not 4 inches down. So we had to make that the traditional base side of the project instead of the Gator Base. So take into account how deep you need to dig. You also have to take into account your slope, right? If you need to build up, well, you have to bring in compactable fill. So Gator Base might not be as, quite as effective and quite as great a time and labor savings in that kind of an application. So excavating, we simply dig out, in many cases, our sod, our turf. Plenty of people are excavating for their Gator Base projects with a sod cutter. We can use Gator Base over pretty much any soil types. can be sandy, can be clay, can be silty. That Gator Base does such a great job of distributing that load that we're really not too concerned about what's underneath. Now, if you have soils where you step in one spot and it bounces 3 feet over, you probably have to amend those soils. But within reason, Gator Base is going to work over every soil type. One of the first Gator Base projects we had when we first launched Gator Base was actually a walkway at an office complex. The contractor had called for a markout, found out there were utilities, gas lines, all kinds of things right where they wanted this walkway, and said, hey, I can't touch this. But he presented them with an alternative, which was using Gator Base, which would allow them to leave all of those buried utilities untouched and undisturbed. That that walkway's still being used today, and it looks great. So that's kind of the background, the idea behind your Gator Base excavation. But the really key difference between your traditional install and your Gator Base installation is cutting off 6 inches of excavation. You're not going down 10 inches, you're only going down 4 inches like we talked about. And Eric is going to explain to you why that is such an important concept.
Yeah, like Mike said, you can see on that graphic there, that was a good visual of a 10-inch excavation versus a 4-inch excavation. I'm going to try and quantify that here, walking through a very quick exercise on our iPad that we have. So on the screen here, you can see we have a 20 by 25 patio. We're just going to use this for simplicity's sake. When you excavate, you can see here, you do have a 6-inch overdig on all sides. So that patio ends up being 21 by 26 square feet. That's where this 546 square foot number comes from. Now, we did the math already. It's 16.7 cubic yards of dirt on a traditional excavation. Now, there's always a fluff factor, and that fluff factor is 1.25. So when it comes down to it, we're taking out 21 cubic yards on a traditional excavation. Again, the 16.7 comes from 546 times 10 inches. Then put into cubic yards, compared to 6.7 on the Gator Base. That's 546 square foot times 4-inch depth. That gives us this 8 cubic yard number. And that's really what we're comparing, is that 21 cubic yards versus 8 cubic yards of excavation. Now, that is dirt that you are bringing out of the ground. You also have to get rid of those spoils. So a lot of you, I'm sure, are using dump trailers, you're using smaller dump trucks. Maybe some of you have a tandem axle dump, but either way, we are reducing the number of trips that you're taking back and forth trying to get rid of all those spoils. So basic excavation numbers showing you how much less excavation you have and how much less dirt you have to take out. So Mike, what do we got for the next step?
Well, a few key points to touch on with that excavation, right? Eric's got a great point. You're minimizing the amount of soil that you need to truck and haul off-site. You're minimizing the amount of soil that you simply have to dig out of the ground. And when you do your excavation for a Gator Base job, admittedly, you need to pay a little bit more attention to your pitch and that tolerance. So traditional installation, ICPI says that your subsoil excavation should be plus or minus 3/8 of an inch. Most guys aren't doing that, right? They're going to fill it in with crushed stone anyway, so if it's plus or minus an inch, well, that's good enough. But with a Gator Base installation, you really want to try for that plus or minus 3/8 of an inch so that you have an even, uniform sand setting bed, right? We're not using any stone. Some guys, well, they like to just do a rough excavation, put in a little bit of crushed stone to save, they think it saves some time versus the more careful attention to detail during that excavation phase. They compact that and then proceed with their Gator Base build. By the same token, if you have to build up the slope, don't take the soil you excavated from the high side and throw it on the low side. That's going to settle over time. Make sure you're using compactable fill to build up any imperfections or height issues that you have in your project. After we've got that done, our subbase, our native soils are well compacted, we're going to lay in a geotextile fabric. And that should be the GF 4.4 non-woven fabric from Alliance. So that's going to provide soil separation, separating our setting bed material from those soils below, maintaining the integrity of that setting bed or leveling layer, providing great drainage. We can allow that water to flow through the gator base, flow through the sand or chip, flow through the fabric into our native soils below. There's no reason to use a woven fabric underneath a gator base. That non-woven 4.4 gives you plenty of strength for this application here, for all those pedestrian applications. So we got our fabric down. Next, we're going to lay in our setting bed material. So that setting bed can be a concrete sand, an ASTM C33 concrete sand like we have here, kind of a coarse-grained, nice and structurally stable material. Or we can use that chip, HPB, a number 8 or number 9 stone, high-performance bedding, that clean stone, angular in nature, without any fines in it. Both are perfectly acceptable for use underneath gator base. Now, when you do put your material in there for the setting bed, you need to make sure that it's uniform. We don't want to have 3 inches of sand on one side of the project and 1 inch of sand on another. So that's why some, careful attention to your initial excavation is important, making sure your initial excavation pitches off the same way as your final surface so that you can use that uniform inch of sand or chip as your setting bed and not have any issues with settlement down the road where that kind of, 3 inches of sand is going to settle more than 1 inch, potentially throwing off your pitch or allowing for water to gather on your project. The Gator Base is a great product, but it needs to be installed correctly according to proper guidelines in order for it to perform properly. So we need to make sure that we got that uniform layer of sand or chip, and then we can put down our Gator Base. So the Gator Base panel itself, you take a look at it, it's got the gator face on it, and it's got the gator face on both sides. So the gator face is actually not only a great advertising piece, but it gives you the correct orientation for the panels. If all of those gator faces line up facing the same direction, then all of the interlocking edges on the Gator Base panel are going to line up and fit together. And I'm going to throw it back to Eric to kind of show you guys the interlock of the Gator Base panels and a couple other cool features that the panels have built into them.
Yep. So you can see here, I have two smaller pieces of our Gator Base panel here. You can see the tongue and groove that Mike was talking about. We have the tongue and groove system right here. And this is very important going back to what we talked about with load disbursement. We want those panels to all interlock together. That way the weight of our project can be dispersed across the entire plane. The other thing you'll notice on the panels, and you saw on the one that Mike was holding up, we have these holes in here. So these holes are for drainage. We talk about water is always going to make its way down into your project. We need to give that water a place to go. And we do that by sloping these channels a little bit. So you can see these channels are all sloped towards those drainage holes I talked about. That allows for proper water evacuation down out into your subsoils through that drainage fabric that Mike talked about. Mike, ready to lay some paver or lay some Gator Base?
I am ready to lay some Gator Base. So first off, we do recommend that you stagger the panels, right? Just the same building, general practice as building a house. You stagger those pieces of plywood, eliminates any 4 corners and helps to make sure that that interlocking edge is going to provide great structural stability. So it's simple to cut a Gator Base sheet in half or to cut a curve. I'm going to cut one right here for you. You just simply score it with a utility knife and then snap it kind of like a sheet of drywall. So we can cut our Gator Base very easily, and you can cut curves, do a curve here. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is that when you cut curves, you're creating waste. When you cut something square, you can certainly reuse that piece somewhere else. So curved walkway may not be the best, most cost-effective use of Gator Base, but if you're working on more straight projects, hey, that's great. If you have a curved edge to your patio, no big deal, right? The bulk of it is still going to use full Gator Base panels. You're only cutting that outer edge. I just wouldn't use it for a serpentine walkway. So the Gator Base panels go down over our screeded out setting bed material. And again, keep those gator faces lined up and everything will fit together. You won't be twirling those pieces around trying to say, hey, how does this fit? How does it go? This was a real job. You'd certainly remove your screed pipe, but we're going to leave it in there for our demonstration today. And now I've got my Gator Base down. So what's really fantastic about having the Gator Base down is that it's protecting that setting bed, right? You've always been taught you can only screed out as much as you can lay in a day. You don't want it to get rained on. people, animals walking through it. Well, once I've got the Gator Base down, it's protected from any rain that may fall on it. I can start walking on it, no problem. So when you have a Gator Base project, certainly some of the benefit is in reducing that excavation, right? You're not digging down 10 inches. We save 6 inches of excavation. We don't bring in all that crushed stone and compact it in lifts. But I think half the benefit of a Gator Base project is how easy it is to lay pavers on Gator Base. I can walk on top of this. I can stage pavers on top of it. You think about the pavers these days. They're getting larger and larger. So we got some pretty good-sized pavers. It is tough to bend over and click and drop. If you happen to drop it in the wrong spot on a sand or chip setting bed, well, you can't just slide it in place because you'll push bedding sand up in the joints and throw off your bond lines and your height. You have to pick that up, fix your sand setting bed, bend over and click and drop that again, hoping you get it in the right place. But with Gator Base, not only can I stack pavers on top of Gator Base and get them ready for whoever's going to lay them, and you got big guys like this, seem to be making pavers heavier and heavier these days, but I can simply put this paver down. All right, paver's down, I want to move it. I slide it into place. I decide, I don't like the way that paver is. I'm going to turn it. All right. And we turn that paver, and we're good to go. So you have a lot of versatility with the Gator Base. It makes it much easier and faster to lay your pavers. So let's get all these pavers laid here. All right. Hey, Eric. You see anything wrong with the pavers here?
I spy a bond line and some four corners there, Mike.
All right, so hey, if you end up looking back over your work and you realize that bond line's really long, or there's a whole bunch of four corners there, that's tough to fix on a sand setting bed, but very easy on Gator Base, right? We can simply slide pavers around, change the orientation. Now we've eliminated the four corners issue that we had. So it makes laying pavers incredibly fast and efficient. And Eric's actually got a little video. We had some of our paver reps, admittedly not the best installers in the world, but they laid out 2 pallets of pavers on Gator Base and on a sand setting bed. And Eric will walk you through that video.
So what you're going to see here, like Mike kind of said, this is demonstrating the benefits gained just by laying pavers on Gator Base. You can see we got the guys on the right. Now this is all pre-excavated, pre-screeded. Obviously the Gator Base is laid out already, but you can already see just how much quicker the guys on the right are laying compared to the guys on the left. Reason being, they have an open plane to work with. They can walk wherever they want on that plane, move those pavers around compared to the guys on the left setting on the sand. Setting on sand, you're confined to one quarter, or you're screeding as you go. You can see we had Penelope, our studio dog. She ran through the screed layer. In a real life application, you'd have to re-screed that area, take some time and re-screed it. You can see the guys on the right, they were done in a little over 27 minutes laying this pad. The exact same pad on the left, those guys are still laying. Again, it gives you so much more flexibility when you are laying pavers. And really, if you're out there, if you're watching and you are one of the guys actually laying pavers, this is the big benefit for you, because it saves your back. You're not walking home or walking to your truck after a long day at work, and you're not sore, or you're not as sore. So, Mike, what about the next step here?
Well, I've got one more point on those pavers, and that's even if you've invested in vacuum lifting equipment, certainly makes life a lot easier. But if you're using vacuum lifting equipment with some of these larger slabs and you're trying to kind of awkwardly reach over, over that sand setting bed while still standing on the laying face, that gets old too. That's not good for your back. Gator Base is going to make laying those large slabs easier, whether you're laying them by hand or with vacuum equipment. Once we have all our pavers laid, we need to do an edge restraint. So Gator Base should always extend 6 inches past the edge of your pavers. That's going to provide structural support for the edge, prevent that border course or the edge of your project from starting to roll or tilt off. And we're going to use our plastic edge, right, our Gator Rigid or Gator Flex edge, and we're just going to place it on top of the Gator Base. And instead of using spikes, because those spikes have nothing to grab into, we're going to use the Gator screws. Eric will give you a close-up of the Gator screw in a minute, but the concept is really simple, right? You just tap the Gator screws in through the holes in the edging, come back, hit the Gator screws with a screw gun, and those screws will open up, anchoring that edge restraint to the Gator base forever. You know, it's permanent. You're not going to have that edge pulling up, you know, moving sideways, lifting up in the frost heaves. Great way to finish off your Gator base project. So Eric, can you show us a little bit about that?
Sure can. So we can see here what we have. This is a piece of Gator base with the edging attached to it. You can see on the bottom view here, these screws have already been expanded, just like a drywall anchor does. And what that does is it mechanically locks your edging into your base. So the edging is locked into the base, and then each of these panels are locked into each other. So there's literally no way that those pavers can move or that edge can migrate. In my mind, this is one of the bigger benefits of Gator Base, because everyone watching out there, you guys know how often you see or get called back for some edge migration. The paver's starting to roll a little bit because whoever's doing the lawn might be a little careless, or just over time that stuff moves. I'm going to show you what Mike kind of touched on with the screws. So you can see here, this screw on right here has already been torqued. These two have not. I'm just going to show you what that looks like underneath. So you see how that one torqued right in there? I'll do the same on here in case you missed it. And now that edge piece is mechanically attached to the Gator base itself. Mike, what's next?
All right. Well, when we first launched Gator Base, we said it was for pedestrian applications only for laying pavers. You know, we trusted Gator Base. We were confident it was going to work. We had test projects in the ground, but we tried other things. You know, we tried driveways, and, well, hey, there are some problems with driveways, right? There's tremendous loads from vehicles turning into a driveway, and tremendous differences in a light passenger vehicle versus a heavier truck. So driveways with Gator Base really isn't going to happen anytime in the near future. It would be a completely different panel for that application. But we did try out installing seat walls and fire pits on Gator Base and found out that that works just fine. So that Gator Base, it really does a great job of distributing that load to the soils below. We've got a 4-to-1 margin of safety on the seat walls and fire pits that we're going to talk about in terms of the load that's actually imparted to the soils below. So works great. You know, now you can incorporate those small seat walls or fire pits into your project. So what are we talking about? You know, we're talking about something that's less than 288 pounds, you know, less than 2 cubic feet of concrete per linear foot. So that could be a, you know, 8 by 24 seat wall, a 12 by 18 seat wall. You just need to make sure that we're not putting too much dead weight in any one area, but you can do those small seat walls or fire pits on top of Gator Base just fine. Now, if you're doing a fire pit on top of Gator Base, we have to make sure that the Gator Base doesn't melt or light on fire. It is a styrofoam product after all. So what we're going to do is incorporate some type of, you know, heat protection in there, whether it's a thick layer of sand, you know, 6-8 inches of sand, a couple inches of sand and some fire brick, a metal insert that directs that heat upwards. You know, we need to make sure that we're protecting that Gator Base from the heat, from the flame, but you can certainly put the weight of that fire pit right on top of Gator Base without having to, you know, go that extra step of installing your fire pit or wall on traditional base there. So great, you know, kind of newer feature to Gator Base, but those small seat walls, you know, incorporate them seamlessly with your project now. So that's about it on the Gator Base front. I think that the chat there has been very, very active. So we're going to see if Brendan has tagged any useful questions. I'm going to join Eric, and we'll do our best to run through as many questions as we can here. Feel free to throw any new ones in the chat.
So I do have some questions. Going back to the edging, Mike and Eric, what if I wanted to use extreme edge instead of the Gator Base edge? Can I do that with Gator Base?
Certainly.
Yeah.
it's not the easiest application for extreme edge. We want that gator base to extend 6 inches past the pavers to provide support. If you're doing that extreme edge, you actually have to cut the gator base off flush with the pavers, cut that fabric, get some gator base, get some extreme edge underneath that gator base to help support the edge and provide that resistance to lateral movement. So it ends up taking a little bit more time than the plastic edge, but it certainly can be done.
Yeah, the other thing to remember, because Mike just talked about tucking the extreme edge underneath the gator base, you do have an additional 3/4 of an inch that you have to make up for when you're actually doing that application. So your coverage rate will drop when you're doing extreme edge.
Yeah, you'll probably see
base.
what,
10-ish, yeah.
10 linear feet out of a bag. What else do we have, Brendan?
Okay, let's say I'm in the Northeast and it's really cold and the customer wants a heated walkway, but I want to use Gator Base. Can we do that?
Well, you are in the Northeast and it's really cold, Brendan. Actually, it's not so cold out right now. But yes, you certainly can use heating elements with Gator Base. So where would you put those, Eric? Below or above the Gator Base?
Well, the heating elements go above the gator base. We want all that heat, like we talked about, gator base is a great insulator. We want that heat to be reflected up instead of down into the ground.
Right. If you put that heating element underneath the gator base, well, it would never melt the snow on top. That's because of that insulative value. So we're going to have to put that hydronic heating element or that electric mat in some sand on top of the gator base. Not a problem. We can put a layer of sand on top of the gator base. In fact, if you're working with gator base and a regular stone, you can screed out a layer of sand on top of it. Do the same thing to protect your heating elements and then lay pavers on top of that.
You do lose some of the efficiencies that we talked about in laying pavers because you now have an additional screed layer on top of your gator base.
I know, you're back to bending over to click and drop all day, but that's life if you want heated pavers. What else do we have, Brendan?
Okay, how does Gator Base hold up to an influx of water years after install and cleaning and resanding multiple times?
All right. Well, I think that the Gator Base is going to hold up just fine, short of the dam breaking upstream.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen with your project really depends on what your soils are and how you've designed that project. So if you have clay soils, you always have to think, I'm digging a hole, water's going to gather in that hole, and how can I get it out?
Right. And on that note, I saw a couple questions about permeable applications. That Gator Base is going to evacuate water as quickly as it can take it in. But it's important to remember, on a true permeable application, we still need a place for that water to go.
Yeah, typically you're building a reservoir out of 1.5 inch clean stone and 3/4 stone. So for a true permeable installation, sure, if you want to speed up the laying portion of your installation, Gator Base will be a great fit, but you need a lot of crushed stone for that reservoir that typically provides your foundation in that case.
Yep. What else we got, Brendan?
Okay. When cutting Gator Base for a curved walkway, is there a minimum piece that I can cut and still use?
Well, as long as it's interlocked, I would say that there really isn't a minimum. I would try to avoid having something smaller than 4 inches or so along the edge.
I like to think about it in pizza terms. You don't want the very last triangle piece of that pizza.
You don't?
No. Not to support your paver project.
Right. So, hey, within reason, as long as it's structurally stable, it's going to work well. But again, pay attention to the edge, not having a tiny, tiny little piece along the edge and having that potentially be able to fold or move, more than it should.
And it's important to remember, we still need a place for our edging to attach on that curve.
All right. What else do we have, Brendan?
Okay, I got this one a couple times. What if I have to make repairs due to tree roots in my project and I did a Gator Base job?
All right. Well, that's kind of one of the benefits to Gator Base. You can go over shallow tree roots. Unfortunately, trees usually continue to grow.
And you're going to see that whether you're doing a Gator Base install or a traditional install.
Or pouring concrete, for that
Or pouring
matter.
concrete.
Ever see sidewalks lifted up?
Right. As those tree roots expand, they are going to pop up.
Now, the one thing I will say is that when you do a Gator Base install over tree roots, it lifts up very nicely, evenly, and gradually. Hey, it still might be objectionable if it lifts up 6 inches, but it is more uniform because of that load distribution effect and that kind of snowshoe effect you get from Gator Base.
Yep, that interlocking tongue and groove panel that we talked about will help bridge a lot of the gaps or a lot of the movement that you may see.
Right, so instead of having, jagged differences, toe stubbers on your paver surface, it stays a lot more uniform. All right, Brendan, let's keep going.
What if we have a porcelain tile job, so much thinner? What are we going to do there?
All right, you're going to call your Alliance Gator rep, and they're going to tell you that you should either use the Gator tile system, which is the Gator Base as a foundation, tile spacers and adhesive to help provide alignment and stability for those tile, or they're going to tell you to thin set it to a concrete slab and use grout, because tile are pretty challenging, and that's a whole different topic, but we know a lot about tile, and we're happy to share it with you. All right, anything else?
We'll do this. A lot of people probably have this question. What is the warranty for Gator Base?
What is the warranty for Gator Base? Well, the Gator Base has a lifetime warranty.
Like I talked about earlier, that Gator Base is going to be in the ground longer than any of us are around until somebody takes it out of the ground.
All right. Now, what about someone's construction skills?
I'm going to let you take.
You going to put a warranty on that? Hey, paver companies don't warranty the installation; they warranty their pavers, and it's same with us. We warranty the Gator Base. If we come out and find that, hey, you used 6 inches of sand underneath it, well, that's not how we said to build a Gator Base patio. You follow our instructions, we are very confident it's going to work, and we'll help you fix it if you encounter any issues. All right, Brendan, anything else, or can we wrap up here?
We'll ask one more question. For the going back to the Gator Edge and Gator screws, how many screws do we need to use?
All right, well, we recommend 1 screw every other hole, which ends up being 13 per stick of edge. You certainly want that many in your curved sections. Straights, maybe you could go every 3rd hole if you wanted to, but we do want to make sure that that Gator edge is rigidly locked onto the Gator Base and not going to be subjected to too much load in any one spot. Yeah,
we talked about how important that edging is. Doing every hole would be overkill, but certainly don't be doing 1 every 2 or 3 feet. That's not going to get the job done.
All right. So we saw that there were tons of questions in the chat, very active. We'll try to come back through and follow up with all of you and make sure we answer any of your questions on Gator Base. But again, you can always reach out to your local Alliance rep, and we're happy to talk about Gator Base, help you design a project using Gator Base, and then even get out there during the installation of that project and show you the little tips and tricks. Make sure you don't dig too deep when you start out or have trouble spinning those Gator Base panels around to figure out the alignment of the tongue and groove edge.
Yep, we want to help you guys all get over that initial learning curve. That's our job.
And hey, that Gator Base, it has been around for a decade. It's time tested. We've got installations from Death Valley all the way up to Manitoba, Saskatchewan. Hot weather, cold weather, rainy conditions, wet, swampy areas, dry, arid conditions. The Gator Base is performing well in all of those locations. We've got millions and millions of square feet in the ground. And if you don't, trust us, hey, try it on a small project. You want to do a small little project at your house, put it in somewhere and keep an eye on it for a few years. That's what we did at Mercer, and we were very impressed with the results. All right.
I think we got it.
Thank you for joining us. Next week, Tuesday at 1 o'clock, we're doing What the Heck is a Polymer? Kind of a more scientific dive into what a polymeric sand is, what polymers are, what resins are, the difference between a polymeric sand and a resin-based joining sand. So that would be our Super Sand or Gator Max versus the new Alliance Gator Nitro, which is that air-cured resin-based sand. So tune in next week for some more great information. We thank you for your business and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.